I'm Ajoya, owner of AJ Excursions.
And I'm Naja P, owner of Freaking Fresh.
Together we are
Village Vibes.
Welcome home. So, who are we?
Who are we? We are the ones that are bringing the global village to the local village. We're bringing a taste of Africa and all of our travels to your backyard because there's more than just your hood.
We're coming home. We're coming into your backyard. You can find us on social media, Instagram, One Village Vibes, Facebook, One Village Vibes.
Right.
You can find me also on Instagram, AJ__excursions, Facebook, Joy AJ Excursions.
You can find me at Instagram, Natural Impressions, Natural Pressions, Natural Impressions. And you can find me at Facebook, Freaking Fresh.
So look us up. Come follow us.
Holla.
We want to see you, talk to you.
freakingfresh@gmail.com.
Oh, Village Vibes 74@gmail.com and AJ Excursions @gmail.com. So our topic today,
girl, protect your edges
and your fences. We talking about boundaries. We sound so cute together.
Oh my gosh, we totally do.
Boundaries. Okay, before we jump all the way into this, what are boundaries? What do we call boundaries?
Boundaries are limits that are set. Correct?
Okay.
I think
that are set.
Boundaries are limits that are set. They're demarcation, lines of demarcation that show what is yours. So that could be collectively your space you need to maintain your mental sanity. It could be your physical space, anything like that. They're lines that are drawn figuratively or literally. And they tell people, this is my area, do not enter. And they also tell us when we need to stay in pocket and not step outside. Sometimes, though, boundaries are meant to be crossed like borders.
Okay. Webster says boundary, something that indicates or fixes a limit or extent. Boundary.
Boundaries.
There you go, love.
Thank you.
So
it fixes the limit. Yeah. So it tells us what our limits are, and it tells other people what their limits are or how limited they are with access to us.
A line that marks the limits of an area, a dividing line.
Right.
Boundaries. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at this. How in a relationship.
And that's any relationship. Well, there's a lot of different types of relationships. What kind are we talking about?
So let's start with this. How to set boundaries for yourself. And then we're going to talk about for others. So how do you set boundaries for yourself? What does those boundaries look like? What are your boundaries for yourself?
That's a good question. I wrote a lot of points on this. I think setting boundaries for yourself is really same thing as limits, where you know your limits, you know you'll tap out, you know when something is too much.
Okay.
So for myself, if I am feeling this gut feeling that something is completely wrong, I don't know if you want to call it your
woman intuition.
I don't know if you want to call it your moral compass. When I know it's wrong or it's not right for me, I ain't crossing that. That is a boundary, a line I won't cross. I will not. I don't give a damn what you tell me. If it don't feel right for me, I'm not doing it, period.
Okay. Boundaries. My boundaries. And see, when I think about the boundaries for myself, I think about when I go out, when we go dancing or go out to a club, or a bar, I only have the 2 drinks.
Right. That's a boundary.
That's my boundary. That's one of my personal boundaries. I think about personal boundary, not letting you come live with me if I'm dating you.
That's right.
right? I think that's a personal boundary. A boundary, not letting you disrespect me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Those are all personal boundaries.
Right.
And I mean, sometimes they're daily boundaries. It could be a limit of how much you're going to spend on lunch, or, you know, what you're going to spend when you go to the mall.
How much you spend shopping, how much you're going to order from Amazon Prime. Jesus. Girl, I think I need I need a limit on Amazon Prime. I think I need a boundary for Amazon Prime and how many times I can have something delivered to my home. Yeah, Amazon Prime, you need to put that into your app. Anyway, boundaries. So those are some of the boundaries I set for myself, right? And a boundary for others, once again, not allowing you to disrespect me. A boundary for others, not allowing you to use me.
Okay.
Not allowing you to take from me without filling my cup back up. Because if I pour my water into your cup and I'm left with nothing, what do I have to drink while you're sitting over there drinking your drink, right? I think that is a boundary I set for others. What would be a boundary that you would set for someone?
You know, there are certain boundaries that are finite with me, physical boundaries. I have a thing about people being in my space. I don't necessarily want you in my bubble, literally at arm's length. I really don't like that shit. But boundaries with people, that kind of goes hand in hand with trust. Okay. And so what I tend to do is I set very, very few boundaries because I really want to see who you are and what you'll do if you think I don't have any boundaries.
So you're like what our moms used to say when we were younger, we're going to give you enough rope to hang yourself?
Yes, I'm that person. Okay. So if you cross the boundaries, I'll let you know. But you know, some people, when they think there are no rules, there's anarchy. Like they're just straight crazy. And some people, they say, okay, there's no rules, but I'm going to create my own. You know, so with me and these personal boundaries, I might not say you can't this. Now, dating is a different story because I have boundaries. Like, I'm not dating you on your couch.
Don't go there. Don't go there. We're going to get there.
That's a personal boundary. I said that's the only time I set a real boundary is when you're dating, dealing with a man. And it don't even have to be dating. It could be sexual. There's certain boundaries. And other than that, I really don't have the boundaries. Like, you know, I'll let you do what you do. And if I don't like the shit, then I'll tell you then.
See, for me, I had, like I said, I had to set boundaries with takers because I'm a giver.
Well, see, that's more setting boundaries with yourself than setting boundaries for somebody else. You can't set both. You can't set about. Listen, if Becky is a taker, she can't take from you what you're not giving her.
Correct. But so I set that as my personal boundary, saying this is how much I'm willing to give.
Right.
And that's it. So for others, but that is also setting a boundary for others, is yourself and others. Like, I'm only going to allow someone to come to this edge.
But you can't stop Becky from asking you 50 times for shit. No,
but that's not. But that I have no control over her, but I have control.
See, that's when a boundary that becomes a fence. Yeah. So there's a difference. So your boundaries are here. So you place these walls up, right? That's a boundary, keeping people out. That's kind of for yourself too. Yes. And then you got that protective fence. So your boundary is not really her boundary. Now you've protected yourself with this fence. So Becky, you can't stop Becky. You could tell Becky, listen, I'm sick of you asking for shit. And with our friendship, this is where you draw a line with Becky, with boundaries. If we're going to remain friends, you got to stop asking me for stuff. Yes. Period. That's a boundary. You drew that line in the sand. Okay. Right. So I drew that line in the sand. So that's my boundary. And then my fence is for me to say no, right? Or I can give $50, and once you ask for $51, you know what? You know what stops a lot of that stuff, and that's just, it doesn't matter if it's money or time or emotions. Is when you ask for something in return. That really stops people from asking you for shit. Like if they ask you for something and you turn around and ask them for something right back. Oh, they don't like that shit. So, okay, let's talk about that real quick. Mama taught me, she said, there's never a loan. Right. And I was like, what? She's like, I never loan anything. I give it to you in my head. Mm-hmm. Now, you came to me asking for a loan.
She's like, but in my head, I gave it to you. Now, if you give it back, if you come back again and ask to borrow, I can loan you again.
Right.
She said, but if you don't give it back, I don't care because in my head, I gave it to you. But it created that fence and boundary.
Right.
It drew that line because you know you owe me. So therefore you can't come back.
Right.
You know you burnt that, you crossed the boundary, you crossed that line.
Right.
And you can't come back. So that is a firm boundary and fence that I have.
Yeah.
That I don't ever give a loan. I always give in my head.
And expect nothing back.
You give it back. But I also know that I can afford to lose it. So I don't give you my mortgage.
What you can't afford.
Knowing if you don't give it back, I'm screwed. But I give what I can afford. And that goes for a lot. And when that lesson, I have incorporated in many ways. And when people asking for anything, my time, my
which is
energy,
something you cannot get back.
You cannot get back. So when I give it, I know I'm giving it freely. Yeah. And therefore I know, and I don't expect you to give it back. Now, if you give me that energy and that time back, then my cup was filled by you versus filling it by me. Yeah. But if you don't, I know that I filled your cup and you didn't fill mine. And I know that you're not.
I know, listen, I've been burned by people because I trust you until I have no reason to.
Yes.
So I trust you and then you show me I shouldn't trust you. And then I don't trust you anymore, right? That's fine, whatever. Things happen. People don't follow through. But when somebody bull-faced lies to you, just like straight lies to you about their intentions, that's problematic. So if I'm really big on do what you say you're going to do. Now, if I say, Joe, I'm going to pay you back in 2 days. And first of all, you know that is impossible. But for you and I, that shows intent. Yes. But no, real talk. If I'm like, Joe, I'm gonna pay you the $600 in 2 days, and it's impossible, and you know it's impossible. Me and you are close enough. You need to be like, girl, that's bullshit. You know you can't do that, right? You need to do that.
But we don't even have to because we know, even though with the intent, we know. So yes. I get what you're saying.
When people tell you something and they know they're not going to follow through, I have a fucking problem with that. I don't give a fuck. If I loan you $50 and I know in my heart you might not give it back, don't you fucking lie to me and tell me, bitch, I'm going to give it back to you. Then come around me and have on $50 shirt or $50 sneakers and shit, but you ain't paying me back, not 1 cent, and act like I never gave you shit. Or don't tell me, Naja, if you do this for me, then I'll do that for you. And I've done all of this and you still ducking and dodging me and you haven't helped me with this over here. That shit pisses me off.
Yes.
I don't give a fuck about what I felt like in my heart. Like, fuck the heart. Like, you should be of your word. See, I'm mad right now.
People don't get that.
I got a lot of people pissing me off. I have a friend, I told you, he borrowed money from me.
I know.
And then bounced. And this nigga's still trying to hit me up. Still saying hi. Bitch, I want you to say hi to me. Give me my motherfucking money, bitch. Because I gave it to you as a friend. And it was the kind of money that you don't just say here and I don't care if it's missing. And I gave it to him with the intent of getting it back in a few days and told him, I need this back. Now, did I live without it? Yes. Was I getting money? Yes. But who gives a fuck? He just skipped town. You know?
I know. So that's why I said okay. Boundaries.
Boundaries. Maybe that's a boundary I said.
Yes.
You know, in friendships, I believe there's boundaries. And that's what I said with sexual thing. I do set boundaries. Like, I will not have sex with a actual friend. A friend. There's no sex going between us because that's not a friendship. That's a relationship. That's just some whole shit. But it's not a friendship. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to. There's boundaries. I don't mess with people. Man, I don't mess with men who is. Let me say that again. I don't mess with people's men. And there are some bitches who act like I do, but no, bitch, I don't. And you know in your heart of hearts that that's not how I am. And there are some scandalous hoes who will act like they're your friends, sit up right up in your fucking house,
to get with your
smile
man
in your face and try and fuck your dude as soon as you turn your head.
But that is a boundary. A boundary I have is no, I don't flirt or try to talk to someone that I know is in a relationship and or married.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We both know that. But I love the inbox you get, I think you're so beautiful. Hey, sexy. How you doing?
Seeing that,
knowing that they are in a relationship and and they cross that boundary. But then when you address it, you are the mean person because you acknowledge.
Well, first of all, who gives a fuck?
Oh, I don't
give a fuck. Like, real talk. Like, we've been talking a lot about the internet, but it's real because people don't interact. We internet. We do the internet thing. We don't do the interaction thing.
No, we have taken social out of the actual and put it into the World Wide Web.
Yeah,
our social is
virtually reacting.
We don't do the actual socialization anymore. And it's so the boundaries, even on Facebook, I have a boundary of I don't send a married man a friend request.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying? Now, if I'm friends with his wife, I definitely won't send him a friend request, or I let her know I'm sending him a request because it's business wise. And then I send.
Make this right. This is on your business Facebook.
Is on my business. Is on Ajoya. Well, I use Ajoya interchangeably with AJ Excursions, but those are certain boundaries that I won't cross that line.
Yeah,
because I know I don't want anyone to feel like, well, she sent you a friend request.
First of all, internet is so funny because there's a lack of boundaries or the lines are blurred, and something like a friend request should not be out of bounds. Like, no, why can't we have friends?
But we have so
many
people that are insecure. But obviously on my page, I have friends that are married. I know I want to talk about this boundary, and she doesn't even know I'm gonna bring this one up. This boundary. Dick pics in the DM.
Okay.
Why do we cross that boundary of if we are flirting or talking? I'm showing interest, you showing interest. And then you cross the boundary of sending a dick pic.
Because they want to know if they're wasting their time talking to you or if you're going to give them some pussy. Like, the fuck? That's why I do it, take you out. But there's no taking each other out online. So they're going to send you the dick.
That's and the take out?
Because you're not dating online. They're going to send you the dick pic. And then you're going to be like, or you're going to be like, bitch, what is you doing? And that's it. Like, they're going to know, are you just friends or are you willing to do more?
I think that's like a huge boundary that you cross.
It lacks tact, first of all. But honestly, there's a big issue with boundaries and respect and communication.
Yes. And that's why I said, I think that is a huge...
Online. Dick pic is nothing. How about videos of them fucking, jacking off, or porn? Because that's what I get. Fuck a dick pic. Dick pic that's some fucking old school shit. I got other shit. I got motherfuckers adding me to lives and they're, busting a nut. Like, the fuck, like, who does that? You call me on Facebook, I answer the phone because I'm sick of you calling me and you're jacking off on the phone. Like, that shit happens all the time. There's levels to this, girl.
Okay, so I'm on level 1. I'm on level 1 of the Atari game, I guess.
But you know what? Social media and our younger group, our younger audience, growing up on social media, whereas we did not, because by the time social media was really big, we were in our 20s. Really, honestly, yes. Yahoo and shit. Yes. And before that, we were in our 20s, late 20s too, by the way, late, almost 30. They grew up with this. They don't know boundaries.
No, and that's why I said, to me, that is a huge boundary that you would cross. That is a boundary that I think I would have for myself. And going back to when you set these boundaries, I look at it, and at first when we said we were going to talk about this, I was like, well, do I have a lot of boundaries? And I guess I do, in a sense of boundaries as far as protecting myself. Like I said, with the drinks, 2 drinks when I'm out, and I just have 2 girly drinks or 2 glasses of wine.
Wait a minute.
My boundaries as far as how I travel when I'm single, when I'm by myself, I have those boundaries, and they are fences to keep me protected.
Yes.
So I have my boundaries, and then out of the boundaries, I create my fence to keep me guarded and protected, and I know who's coming into the fence.
Right.
I know who's going out. Let me ask you, are they important? How important are our boundaries and fences? How important are the edges and fences? Because we can come up and protect ourselves in our fence, rather, right? I said that wrong. So we can come up and protect ourselves in our fence. But then we can come to the edge,
right?
The edge, and look in and see. So what's that? What are your edges?
So edges are tricky because edges are the things that can propel you forward or they can hold you back. They can harm you or they can help you. I mean, if you never push forward and kind of like westward expansion, if you don't try and just go feel out things, go beyond your safe zone, your comfort zone, then you're not growing. So with your growth, your boundaries, they change.
Yes.
Your borders change. There is a time when you need to jump over the edge, like when you're moving out of your house, your parents' house, when you're young, like when you're starting your first job, when you're going off to school. That is the edge.
I like that.
But that's a very, but you have a parachute that works. It's not, geez, that meth looks good. Let me try that shit. Cause that's an edge. You don't need to step off that edge. But you
so I'm
die.
thinking about that. I'm thinking about my edges. I'm thinking about my edges, right?
Yeah.
So I'm protecting my edges. I don't let people braid and pull my edges because I want to keep them.
Right.
So if you want to, you don't want the heavy stress on your edges because we want to keep them, right, babies? We don't want to be bald.
Yeah, you want your edges.
So
you avoid people who know are triggers. I have down button pushers. Button pushers. When you have people who are constantly, purposely pushing your buttons, that is undue stress. Those are those things. That's that braid that's a little too tight that you could have told the hairdresser, hey, ease up on this. You know what I'm saying?
Just kept it there.
Right.
And now it's about to either pull all your that spot out or you're going to have to take that braid out because it was so painful.
Right.
Okay. So button pushers. So I have the button pusher of, I just mentioned, just jumping into wanting to talk about sex. Because I'm like, don't get me wrong, I'm human. Mm-hmm. We all love the human
so you avoid those people
interactions. So I don't want that to be the main, the first, the only.
Well, how real is your interaction on the internet for you?
I really don't do internet.
See, if it's not real for you, then that shouldn't even be a button push. That's a real basic one. That's a simple one. You can simply block.
Oh, I don't delete. I've only had like a few.
Erase.
I've only had a few of the people that wanted to be ignorant and
see, because for you have a group of people, a whole network of people that you deal with here locally, right?
Yes.
So when you get on the internet, it's just to reach out to them. And if it's somebody outside of that, it's business-wise, mostly. Not all the time, but mostly. Me, I have a whole life on the internet.
Correct.
I have a lot of my friends and people I deal with are not here, right? So if it's not an internet, all that virtual, that's texting too, because that shit ain't real if you're not here. So for me, the internet, those interactions, they're real. They're real life because I might have met you someplace and we talked and we went out and then we talked on the phone and we keep up our relationship online. Like I do a lot of that shit. So it's different for me.
And I do have a lot of international relationships.
Right.
And I do keep those up. So, okay. I like that. So give me an edge that you've recently crossed? Give me an edge. What's an edge? I'm trying to think of an edge that I
Well,
I know which mine is.
Stepping on the edge, like there's every day you can go to the edge. It doesn't mean, listen, there are days when I want to curse somebody out and I'm on the edge, right? I'm right on the edge. And I know if I do this, it is for real. For me, I have to every day. I have to do a new fence every day. Every day. It's like a tear down fence, right? So I had to build a new fence every day and say, okay, what is my goal today? What are my boundaries today? What am I going to do? Where is my limit going to be today? And every day, this person who I cannot get rid of is a button pusher. Every day I go to the edge.
Okay.
I go to the edge of my fence. Sometimes I jump the fence and I go, and I'm getting ready to go. I'm on the edge of the border. I'm about to cross into new territory or old territory, depending. I choose not to. That's an edge that I'm on every day. I have crossed it, but there are consequences, you know.
And I like that you say that because my edge is similar. I want to say things about situations that have happened, but I can't. Because I have to be mindful of my clients. Right. I have to be mindful of, I don't want to alienate a client and make a client not want to travel with me, but I want to say things. I want to mention things and I can't. So I like that because I walk that edge a lot. Yeah. I walk that edge of being petty every morning. Because my pettiness comes out every single morning. And every single morning, like you, I got to take her, sit her down, rub her shoulders, and tell her to go sit down somewhere. Because I want to say things. I want to respond to a comment. I want to respond to a person who made a comment to me.
So you have that professional boundary.
And I have that professional boundary.
Thank God. Thank God you have that. Because if I didn't have it, if you have a self-imposed professionalism, which is your boundary, which sets boundaries, right? And then you just have just the nature of you having that business. There are just certain boundaries, things that are not acceptable. If you didn't have those, or if you did not have that level of professionalism, you would have gone there.
AJ excursions wouldn't be AJ excursions.
Right.
Would not be.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, edges and boundaries. Edges, sometimes it's good to jump off the edge. Sometimes it's good to expand your boundaries, your territory, and go into new land. And then there's other times you really need to practice self-preservation.
So that goes into not knowing your own limits and boundaries.
Right.
Not knowing. I think that is so scary when we don't know.
So to me, when I hear not knowing your own limits or boundaries is that you are lost, that you are just reactive. You are not in control of anything. You're not proactive.
Yes.
You're not taking time to observe. You're not reflective. You're just reacting to everything. You're on the edge. That's what that sounds like to me.
And for me, it also sounds like taking it and just adding to that, it sounds like someone who is allowing any and everything. They don't know themselves and they don't love themselves and they don't sometimes like themselves. So they are allowing any and everything to go on. I'm talking about from at work, at home, in the bar.
What if they're not affected by it though? What if it doesn't affect them negatively? Like, I mean, sometimes, you see a relationship, you don't understand why people are together. And the person's happy or is so disconnected from themselves that it doesn't affect them at all.
For some, it may not, but I've also seen where people have not set any boundaries around them. There are no limits, and their kids. I watched someone who allowed their son to, and I'm just using as an example, I'm just thinking about that, right? Who allowed their son to total their car. They've given their son thousands of dollars. They have put their son in and out of rehab so many times you lose count. They are the ones sending every Christmas and birthday gifts to their sons' kids. They are doing everything because there's no boundary that they set for their son around them. So their son is just taken and just
because
abusing.
their enablement has become the fence.
Yes.
You understand? So maybe they set boundaries younger and he did not adhere to their rules. Or maybe they didn't set them.
I don't think they ever set any boundaries.
Now their enablement has become the fence. So they think by doing all of this, they're protecting him and they're actually trapping themselves.
Yes.
You know, I mean, there's a lot of ways to think about that.
I think another way.
There's issues with boundaries. You know, boundaries are only made because other people impose on you.
Yes.
Right.
I think
and society has these, they judge you and they have these rules that you're supposed to follow. But I mean, really, honestly, I know the boundaries are needed to maintain some type of order, because boundaries are laws, rules, things like that. I understand that, but I also feel like they are imposed. Like, I mean, my boundary might not look like a boundary set for you, but I don't have to set my boundaries in accordance to what you think. Who the fuck are you? You're society. Mm-hmm. You're not me. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I see a lot of things, you know, there's just, for example, boundaries, society sets these rules as Black against women, let's say women. There's certain rules for women. So if a woman wears a suit, she's fall within these boundaries. She's fallen within the boundaries that they find acceptable. Yes. But if you wear a skirt and it's above your knee, then you might be crossing that line. But is there something wrong with wearing a skirt that's slightly above your knee? What is wrong with that? Is it because a man sexualizes you? Well, then your boundaries are imposed on me because you can't control your damn self. And where are your boundaries and where's your self-control? So there is a big problem with boundaries.
That's very interesting, because not knowing your boundaries, not knowing your limits. I love that what you just said, and because what we wear, how we present ourselves, men feel like they can say
right
and respond based off what we are wearing.
Right.
But it's because, to me, they don't know their limits. They don't know that just because of what I have on doesn't give them the right to say whatever they want to say. You can think it. You can't say it. And that's like, to me, not knowing your limit, not knowing your limit in that situation. And I love when, you know, guys will come and say, well, it's because,
right,
you know, she had on, she presented. No, you didn't know your limit. You didn't know that just because she had that on.
You could see me naked, right? I could be, somebody could be visiting my home or whatever and see me naked, and they might feel that that's an invitation for them to cross a boundary and say something sexual or lewd to me, right? But you've seen your mother naked. Do you say sexual and lewd things to her?
Exactly.
Like that again. It's really boundaries. Sometimes that they're not for us; they're for others, and it's not always to benefit us, but to make other people comfortable, and
accountable.
Sometimes accountable. Sometimes it lets them be less accountable, you know, because you wore a sheer shirt to work with a camisole. I'm entitled to say, hey, you got a nice rack. Okay. Now the boundaries where that might be a questionable shirt, right? That's where it falls within that boundary of maybe it wasn't professional, allowed this man to get away with this bullshit. You know, and women do the same thing.
Yes,
you know,
we do.
They're catty with each other, or they might say, you know, you might be working someplace or be somewhere and see a man in gray sweatpants and feel because he has them on, you can say, hey, I see your print or whatever. Call him an eggplant, whatever the fuck you do. I know women harass men with the gray sweatpants,
I didn't even know the gray sweatpants was a thing until last year.
Right. You know,
Lord of mercy.
Or track pants or whatever. So rules are needed, but rules and boundaries, they are meant to control people and
control people and to control yourself.
And people who are the most successful tend to be the ones that really don't adhere to boundaries and rules, quite honestly, or they break them all, say fuck it and throw it to the wind and do what they want to do.
I agree.
Really. That's why we have an orange retard for a president.
Yeah, that's the orange man. So
I'm sorry.
Why are fences needed? I'm thinking of a fence, and I remember back being this tomboy little girl who loved to climb fences and just run and play. And it was to protect the neighbor's yard and to separate our yard. And fences are needed, to me, to separate, to keep what I have safe, to keep what I have contained to me, to allow you in when I want to allow you in, and to keep you out when I want you out.
Yes.
Right? So why are they needed though?
For that very reason. I mean, and before there were fences, there were territories, right?
Yes.
And so you didn't cross this territory, or you'd be in someone else's land or land that they lived on. And so there's always been some type of markation. But with civilization and cities, fences were specifically put up because of greed and people wanting to say they owned a part of something
that they didn't own.
Yeah, that they did not own. So I think fences they're a good thing to have for protection. But, there's a fine line. You put up so many fences that you now have become a prisoner. I mean, when I walked into the prison, I was surrounded by fences, and it's just, I don't know.
It's sometimes, like I said, to keep things in.
Right. Keep things in and to keep people out. There's a movie called The Rabbit Fence. So The Rabbit Fence, it's in Australia. They showed kangaroos caught up on the rabbit fence, burnt dead, right? But the rabbit fence was meant to keep the Aborigines separate from the white people.
Yes.
Let's not even talk about these fires, because I'm wondering what's happening with the indigenous people. We hear nothing about them. They still live out there. There are still people on walkabouts. Where are they? Are they dead? Let's not even talk about that, right?
Well, only thing we talked about the 2 billion animals. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, well, I feel bad about the animals
I do too.
But
I said the only thing.
That same fence that was meant to protect a certain group of people from wild animals that lived there before you brought your what were they? I don't know. What were they? It's the words on the tip of my tongue. They were deviants because Australia was full of people who were criminals, right? They dumped them on there. Not Aborigines,
from England.
But
that's
English,
where you have
dumped
to
their
go.
trash on Australia. And so you have a bunch of deviants. So you got this fence that was supposed to protect the deviants or the deviants' offspring from indigenous peoples and animals. It's now become a holding pen, and these poor little animals are stuck on this fence, barbecued to them, right? So there you have to be really careful about intent, because Trump wants to build a wall. Well, I mean, you build a big enough wall, it becomes an enclosure. That's a fence. That's also a prison. That's also another way to alienate people. Fences to me are just that. They're I understand they're for protection, but
they also lay claim to ownership.
Yes, ownership, and that's why I said, like,
you put what's in your fence. You know it's yours. You own it. You protect it. You hold it dear. You don't let, and then I can come in and visit if I want to.
Right.
and I can leave out of it if I want to. And then I come back into it and I'm safe in that fence.
Right.
And so, like you're saying, for some things, you do need a fence. You need a fence to let your dog out in the backyard.
Okay.
So your dog doesn't leave.
Right.
Right. But
so let's talk about a mental fence, a mental and emotional fence, because a mental and emotional fence, they can be things that are preventative, like getting enough sleep.
yes.
Like, again, cutting off people who are, I hate the word toxic, but who are just not good for you.
Not good for you.
About things like talking to friends and new people, meditating, picking up hobbies, going to school, doing whatever you need to do physically to get your health right. That's also building a fence, because fences do prevent things from coming in that maybe shouldn't be there. They
Yes.
can keep you from harm. So within all of these fences and all these restrictions and all these rules, make sure that the fence you're building around yourself is something that is beneficial for you. It's something that is productive, something that is healthy, that's got
and that
good
you can come in and
vibes.
out of.
Yeah.
Don't build the wall. Build a fence and not a wall.
Right.
Because a wall, you end up keep building it and you find yourself stuck in that wall and you can't get out. You become your own prisoner in your mind, in your home, in your family.
Yeah.
You become, but a fence that allows you to go in and out.
Look at the play fences. The play fences, the man, he built this fence to keep his family safe. Now, he walked outside that fence. He had this family. He was very overbearing. He was loving, but he was controlling and all these things. He walked down the street and he made a baby with somebody else on his wife. Mm-hmm. Right? Tried to keep his son in the house and this, that, and the other thing. His son went off and left. And at the end of this play, he tore the fence down.
Yes. Right?
Because fences aren't always needed. Like if
they are not,
right?
Because you can know your area without a fence, and you can let people come and go. But sometimes people feel the need, and I think they just need to recognize that it is a fence, and when that fence is turned into a wall. Or when they need to expand that fence. Right. Because a lot of times you don't realize that your space has outgrown that fence. Mm-hmm. Your items in that fence has outgrown it. Right. And you need a bigger fence. You need a bigger yard. Yeah. And instead we just keep adding more stuff into it. And it's spilling out into those, out through every hole and every crack in that fence. Right. Instead of saying, wait a minute, I have all these things. Mm-hmm. I need to take this fence and expand it. I need to move into a bigger fence. I need to take this fence down because it's no longer needed. Yeah. Because when I did the fence, my kids were 1 and 2 years old. Yeah. My kids are 12 and 13 now.
You have to reevaluate why you put up these fences. You know, a parent can be a fence. They can also be very controlling and then end up being wardens. And then, as soon as your kid gets a taste of freedom, they're going to jump that fence and tell you to fuck yourself, right? This happens all the time.
It does.
Controlling people, they're always trying to box people in. Overbearing parents are trying to box people in.
They build walls.
It really, you have to know the difference. Know that especially when you're in a relationship, know the difference between somebody who is trying to build a fence for protection or fence your ass in. Know the difference. And, with parents, with love, with mates or what have you, you don't need a fence. I mean, there's invisible fence. Like if you instill in them values, if you loyalty, love, trust, all those things.
And respect.
Yes, those things, whether it be in your child or you show your mate that you're trustworthy or whatever, you don't need a fence. You don't need to be controlling. You don't need to be overbearing. I call it invisible fence. Like they will stay within that safe haven because they trust you. And the fence is the connection, and the fence is your word, and the fence is the actions you show, and boundaries. There's so many different boundaries. I need to go to, we talked about work boundaries, right? Ooh. There's all types of things, clothing, TMI, all types of shit, right? We talked about some type of relationship boundaries. What about boundaries within your family? Because that's very difficult, because as family members, as everybody knows, like, we all get in each other's business, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of times where boundaries are crossed, where lines are blurred. And how do you set boundaries with family members? How do you
And
tell
not just
your
family
mother?
members, roommate, spouse.
Well, roommate is different,
but it's still
because there's a very finite break between you all live in the same house, but you're not related.
Sometimes you are.
Well,
let's
even if we were cousins and we're living in the same house, that's half a rent. There's set rules. If you're not roommates, if it's just a family situation and you got, your auntie who's always in your business crossing boundaries, or, your mother who's asking you about your sex life, that crosses a boundary. Like, how do you set boundaries for family members? And how do you tell somebody it's none of your business?
Ooh.
Listen, I'm not good at being nice about that. I don't like being pressed. That's a boundary. When I said I had no boundaries, I had to rethink that while you were talking to me, because I do have boundaries. I have a lot of little rules I have set up for myself and how I allow someone to interact with me. Those are boundaries. Those are fences. Those are walls, right?
And when you live with someone, I think boundaries, when it comes to how you maintain that home, who you allow into that home,
right?
Because who you trust in that home doesn't mean it's someone I trust in that home.
Right.
And we have to collectively decide that we are going to protect this home. So that is a boundary of who you bring in. If you bring in a guy and I'm asleep and my door is open and I don't sleep and the sheet moves or whatever, that person can come and do anything. Those are great boundaries that people don't think about. You don't think about having those boundaries inside the home. You don't think about if you have boundaries. Do you have boundaries with your sister?
When I moved, I had to think long and hard about it, because I already knew the boundaries were going to be crossed. I already knew that, my button pushers were there and that there was going to be a big issue with this. I knew right off the bat. And then I had to say, okay, you're stepping into this. Listen, if you step in shit, it's going to stink, especially when you're stepping in on purpose, right? So so I already knew what it was, but my God, it's very difficult. If somebody brings a man in and you're sleeping naked with your door open, you've crossed the boundary because you don't respect that there's somebody else in that house, and you need to close your door because they don't need to see you.
No, they don't. But
right?
You didn't know they were bringing anyone home, and
see that's where there's personal boundaries that maybe shouldn't be. Just like me. So when I go in the room, I close the door. Why? Because I don't want nobody listening to me. Don't listen to my fucking conversation. Don't be all in my damn mouth. I don't like that shit. I've set a physical boundary. Now, if you come to that door to listen, you crossing boundaries. And you're choosing
to hear what I'm talking about.
You understand?
Hey,
you know what I'm saying?
But people, when we first brought this topic up, and we said family, boundaries or respecting boundaries when you live together, and I had never even thought about that. I remember when I was living with Mama in my 20s, and she said to me, if you staying out all night, just call me. Because by 12 o'clock, I want to lock the house down. So therefore, I know if anyone comes in here.
Did you have keys?
I had keys, right? And because she was going to put the alarm on. Yes, I could turn the alarm off. But in her head, she's like, if you come in here at 2, 3 in the morning after you told me you wasn't coming, or if I hear something, then I know that person shouldn't be in this house, right? But I thought about that, like, we had different boundaries. We had different things, and I didn't even realize it. And I think most people don't realize it, that you do set boundaries when you're living with someone, especially family. You do set boundaries for your sister regarding your clothes, regarding, even with your brother, regarding clothes or regarding how long you're going to be in the bathroom, knowing we both have to get up for work in the morning.
At the same time.
Or at the same time. Or the social aspect, are we going to be entertaining having parties on a Wednesday night?
Right.
Or are we just going to entertain on Saturday? Are we going to entertain at all?
Living with somebody is so problematic. I mean, you have two different lifestyles. Sometimes you have two entirely different
personalities and cultures, everything.
Sets of values. And don't let it be a mate, because that's even harder. Having lived with people multiple times, boundaries is a necessity.
I agree. Boundaries are needed.
There is a time if somebody's entering your home, coming into your home, then boundaries become walls. You have to take down those walls and set new boundaries.
So that's where we're going to.
Very difficult.
When do boundaries become friendly borders, bending?
Mm-hmm.
When do you bend your boundaries?
If you're telling Bobby, I want you to come live with me. I totally love you. And he comes in the house and he's got like 12 bags of clothes. You're going to have to bend your borders and give him some closet space. Like, come the fuck on.
I do.
If he's coming to you and you are not getting a home collectively, then you need to make space for him.
Where is he putting his clothes?
Bobby has to have a closet. And if he doesn't, you really don't want him there. Why do you want somebody in your space uncomfortable? That's just at your whim.
No, but
for your entertainment.
I don't have any closet space for him.
Well, make some. Put your shit in bins and put it in the basement. Bitch, you invited Bobby. Do you want Bobby or do you want a closet? Like, those are boundaries. Those are things you have to reorganize.
I don't like this.
It was very hard for me to reorganize when I had somebody with me, because I barely had enough space for myself and my kids. And to reorganize,
y'all, listen now.
That
just messed me up, because
that was a jacked up situation.
If you come live with me, I don't have anything.
Boundaries is something as simple as somebody who's a day person versus somebody who's a night person. So I'm a morning person. I have never met a dude that I've dated that was a morning person. They're all night owls. So I'm ready to go in the morning. And they don't want to talk, nothing. They ruin your whole day. They be crappy acting and shit, attitudes. There's a boundary. Like, I had to hold back my own routine not to disturb this such and such. How about when you're in a relationship, there's certain expectations. But you have to bend that.
So how do you bend that boundary? If
you learn to compromise. I mean, and sometimes you can compromise so much that you turn around and there are no fences. And there's
I agree.
Then you don't know where your property lines begin and end.
I agree. And I think those are the things that scare me. I remembered when I bent so much, when I allowed my borders to become almost non-existent, that I looked around and I was like, wait a minute. Everything was blurred. Everything,
right.
There was nothing left of where I lived.
Nothing
mentally,
of joys.
physically. I couldn't identify any of my property because I bent so much. I couldn't even realize.
You gave it all away.
I gave it all away. Where was my property? And I had to then go back and get measurements and figure out
and survey that land.
And I had to start getting me back and within my getting some edges and putting my fences up and creating my boundaries to build my home because I did not know. So I do think, yes, you should, be friendly with your borders and bend. And when do you bend? I think in a relationship is mainly, or with your family sometimes. Sometimes you have to bend your borders, or, when you're with family, when you're talking to family, when you're visiting family, when you're dealing with family. But otherwise, I think edges are necessary to figure out what edge you're going to cross or what edge you need to loosen up and tell the braider to loosen up.
How do you set boundaries at church?
Oh, so one of my boundaries is at church, I don't get into the politics and gossip. That is a boundary. I don't want to hear what you don't like about Pastor Pierre. I don't want to hear if you liked what Pastor Pierre said, or if you liked what Pastor Pierre and his wife Marlise event that just put on. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about if someone did something at church, if the rumor is that such and such is sleeping with such and such or doing, I don't want to hear about it. So I stay out of all of that. I stay out of, well, is a new pastor coming. Okay. Well, where is he? I don't know where he's coming from. I don't know where they came from. So I had to learn that because I don't go to church for people.
Right.
And I don't want, because what I learned is people was at this church, did all this gossiping, did all this, and then they came to this church, and then they came to this church. They just move around. They church hop. And so I decided I didn't want to be a part of that part.
Right.
So those are huge boundaries that I had to, and I learned to have a fence that I can let people in and out of.
Yeah.
And I love that. I created my fence of what I wanted to let you in on, which was talking about the word, praying over people, helping someone out. Someone was in need. But otherwise, I closed that gate and kept me in and focused on what I needed to be there for, which was spiritual growth.
Right.
So to me, that's a boundary that many of us don't think about, is church.
I mean, I don't attend church regularly. Part of my issue is just, especially in dealing with the Black churches, I love the music, don't get me wrong, because it's the word through music that touches me greatest. But it's also the lack of boundaries, lack of respect, lack of tact, lack of following the word, which sets very specific boundaries as to how you should behave if you are following this faith, that turns me off, and see, then walls go up, and then I'm not able to hear anything that's being said, or that maybe I should know, I should be getting fed emotionally.
Okay.
Because even the person sometimes who's relaying the word, even they sometimes say things that you may not agree with or cross boundaries,
And when I recognize that, I question it, and I have gone and asked questions, because sometimes I just need a clarification.
Right.
Or I took it one way and they meant it an entirely different way.
Right.
Or I didn't understand the word enough. So I had to go do some research. I had to go look up what a word meant from the Bible, because I thought, and I've always took it in this context.
But it was something entirely different.
He came or she came from a different, and I needed to know, how did you get to that context? Because when I read it, I gleaned this information, and you took it somewhere else that I never even thought of. So I had to go and do some more research, because otherwise I would have built the wall and I would have put them out of my space, because you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, also their interpretation may not be yours.
Yes.
And that's the thing about boundaries and rules and fences and all those. They're all, they all can, interpretation plays a part in that. They really aren't concrete.
They're not, because what I think is a boundary, you may think is an edge. What I think is a fence, you may take as a wall.
Right.
And we're not communicating. We're not explaining, or
we don't have the same expectations.
No, we don't.
You and I don't. Human. You and I don't have the same boundaries.
No,
because we live in different worlds. Honestly, you don't adhere to all social norms and expectations, and I surely don't. I'm even further to the left. I think that's the beauty of our friendship since beginning. I mean, I can go back in early 2000s when you and I were going out and people were staring at us because we walked in and we were we looked nothing like everyone else in the place.
And in Rochester, they literally just remember when we would go out, and they would just stare at us. And then we would go to New York City and they would come up to us telling us how fly we looked, how they loved what we had on. And then in Rochester, it was like a total difference, even though now today, we don't even stand out anymore. I don't think. We stand out being who we are, but I'm talking about just how we really, individually and creatively and fashionably, we were just totally two different people. And they just did not know what to do with us.
Oh, because they've caught up. But boundaries, at the end of the day, boundaries are a necessity. Rules are a necessity.
Having edges, we gonna keep our edges this year.
Protect your edges.
Protect your edges.
Protect them.
Protect your fence. But realize that your fence can expand, come down.
Realize when your fence has become your prison.
Your prison, because it can turn into a wall easily.
Right.
So edges, fences, boundaries. Know your boundaries. Set your boundaries. Know your limits.
Be specific. Be honest. Be specific if you can. Be straightforward.
Explain and tell them what your boundaries are. Because a lot of times we have these boundaries and I assume you know my boundary.
And I don't.
And then you cross my boundary and I'm upset with you. I want to break up with you. I don't want you as my friend.
Or you
I don't
do
want to talk to
something
you.
that encroaches on my boundaries. And then now we're fighting. Now we're warring.
But I didn't tell you that was a boundary, or I didn't tell you that I wanted you in this fence and this was the fence and area. And you went beyond that area, which it went from being a fence to being a boundary. So I love this. I love this conversation. Boundaries, edges. We're going to protect our edges this year, ladies and gentlemen. Gentlemen, we're going to catch and protect our fade in the front. We're gonna keep our fade tight, right?
Protect your man weave.
Right. For those with the man weave, we're going to protect that as well. Okay.
Protect your Beijing fake edges that you got sprayed on.
So remember, this year we protecting. We keeping these edges tight, ladies and gentlemen. Community shout out. Quickly. We're going to do the Souls of Our Folks, February 21st, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And it's free. And you can find it on Eventbrite. Right. So what's the next one?
You got me lost.
Black Love Affair.
Black Love Affair, February 22nd, 9 to 2 a.m. That's also free. So check them out, Eventbrite. So we
check
got the
both of those
issue
out.
And the Black Love Affair. And
let's shout out our girl.
Oh, Cassie
Hubbard for Cassafras Clothing. So when you come to Village Vibes and you see our custom design clothes that Naj and I design, she is the one who puts them together and sews them together and make them so beautiful.
She's a killer seamstress.
So we are shouting out Cassafras to say thank you.
Thank you so much.
And if you need her, you better hit her up because she designs
if you're interested in getting in touch with her, you can leave us a message. You can email us at villagevibes74
at gmail.com.
You can look us up on Instagram or Facebook, One Village Vibes.
And then you can also find her on Facebook at African Fresh. Freaking Fresh.
Thank you.
She, I will mess it up every time, but it's Freaking Fresh.
Joy.
On Facebook. And then Natural Impressions on Instagram.
Yep.
How do you spell that again?
Natural, NP. RESSIONS, Natural Impressions, NP.
You get it? So, and I'm on Instagram with AJ__excursions. Yeah. Facebook, Joy at AJ Excursions or just AJ Excursions. So come hook us up. Come see us. Come talk to us. Come vibe with us because we are One Village Vibe.
It's a vibe.
We are One Village. So, next up. New Black history makers.
If you're Black, you're making history every day. Just being alive, you're making history. But there's some new Black history makers that we definitely
want to talk about. They're doing some big things.
To discover.
That we want to do some research on. So we are about to research and figure out who are new Black history makers.
And we're talking young people
that are
and
making
olders, but young people who are making moves. Who are going to be the people who shape the next decade?
So we're going to talk about them. So in that, we say thank you to the village.
Thank you. Shukran.
We say welcome to the village.
Welcome home.
Welcome home. Thank you. Peace and love.
Peace.